When it comes to planning a retreat, there's ways to get it to go from average to incredibly transformative. Welcome to Retreat Boss, where we speak about inspired travel for fun, transformation, and profit. Guest experts will give you their tips and tricks on creating the most impactful retreats, both for you and your clients. Whether you want a meditative getaway, a wellness trip, or a business escapade, we provide you with the best advice in organizing and hosting a tremendous event. Join Catherine Contos as she talks with fellow experts about creating exclusive and successful retreats. Dive deep into the most unique activities, the best destinations to visit, and the most uplifting trips out there that you can discover. Here is your host, Catherine Contos. Laili Gonzalez is an interior designer who uses Feng Shui to transform spaces by creating a harmonious energy that attracts abundance. And when I heard that, I thought, can she do this for retreats? Welcome, Laili.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine.
You know, I've always been intrigued by the practice of Feng Shui. And not that I know too much about it, but, you know, I've read about it here and there, far from being any type of expert, that's for sure. But I do kind of like always want to know, and I'm curious a little bit about it. So you're in the interior design space. What came first? Was it your love for Feng Shui, or did you go into interior design and say, well, why don't I add this to my services?
It was actually much more of the latter. So I've been in design for almost 20 years. And I've always throughout this time loved Feng Shui and read about it, kind of like you, sort of, it's interesting, I'm curious, read articles here and there. But then it was, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago when I was designing someone else's space and coming home to my own, that I really felt like, I wonder what's going on with the energy of these spaces. And particularly for a client, we were using a lot of bold colors. And I was like, I wonder if I'm doing something, to the energy here. And I started to learn more and more about Feng Shui. And then I was just sold. I was like, I have to figure out how this works. So I enrolled to get certified as soon as I could.
And do you find a lot of your clients are attracted to you and your business because of that?
Well, I think for my clients, it's fairly new. Some of my longstanding clients are now like, oh, I really want to talk to you about that. And a lot of people who know me sort of here, especially locally in Zurich, where I'm involved in a lot of entrepreneurial sort of groups, are super curious. And it's been really interesting seeing people sort of come out of their shell and just ask you all these questions that they might not normally have asked had I just been an interior designer.
Yeah, and when I reached out to you, I thought more like from what I saw was, I'm wondering if she teaches this to people. I'm wondering if she's, done this for retreat spaces. And, obviously a venue could use you, because it's all about
Absolutely,
energy.
yeah.
Like a lot of it is about energy in retreats, depending on what type of retreat, but especially anything spiritual or transformational. It has, I think it would be a perfect thing to do to your venue is create the energy that you're looking for. Right. And then when we were discussing it and I'm like, well, can you do it for an event? And when you said yes, I'm like, oh, okay. Let's talk.
I mean, there's so much you can do. And I think I think one of the important things is just that there's different types of Feng Shui and there's almost different levels of what you can do. Obviously, like you said, for a venue, it's, it doesn't change. So it's easy to go into a venue and harmonize the energies and get it ready for retreats. But with events, it would have to be, looking at maybe like, I think we talked about this a little bit before, but, choosing the right venue. Some venues are going to have better energy than others. And you can use Feng Shui as a tool to sort of analyze from a, peripheral view, is this energy going to be better for me or is this one? And the type of Feng Shui that I practice is called flying stars. It's a traditional Feng Shui, and it really relies on a lot of detailed information about the building and the space itself. So it's less about where your furniture is placed or, just what colors go and where. And it's much more about almost alchemizing the actual energy of a space using real items like metal and wood and water to represent the elements that we're trying to balance in a space. So, when you're talking about a venue, it's no problem. When you're talking about an event, then you can go into a space and look at it and say, well, I can't cart in however many kilos of metal that I need, but what are the things that we can do? How are we going to look at the space and see, does it have a good flow of energy? Is there anything that, we might want to kind of stop the flow? Like if there's doors facing each other, can we bring something in to cover that path so that the energy doesn't flow in and flow out? There are things like that we can do that can just help. And like you said, with retreats, they're about transformation. And so is Feng Shui. And it works so well together. I think, especially if you're talking about spiritual retreats, where people are going there for some sort of emotional or transformative experience.
Right. And even before you would do anything like this, anybody who goes into a space, there's an energy that they feel right away. There's a vibe, right? Yeah. You go in there and you just automatically feel peaceful, or something creates some type of agitation, or mistrust, or, there's these emotions oftentimes that we feel them. We don't even realize we're feeling them, but we kind of feel like uncomfortable, or, there's some Absolutely. Sensations that happen in our body. Right. Yeah. So I can imagine also, after, I wonder, has it ever happened to you where you had a client where, they felt one way, and after you did they actually feel different? Like, what are the testimonials when it comes to that?
Well, it's really interesting, because I think for a lot of people, when things start to happen, their first reaction is like, I'm not sure if that's a coincidence. But, recently a client of mine told me her husband, who had been looking for a job for a really, really long time, she had started to put in her remedies. And in 1 week, he got 3 calls for interviews, which he hadn't gotten in ages. Oh. And, her reaction was like, well, I really wanted to tell you, I'm not sure if it's a coincidence, but, and part of it is, it's these little things, the synchronicities that start to happen. And it, it's not like a big, oh, I put my remedies in and, your finger snapped and everything's better. But it's these little things that start to happen, and you start to see that challenges that you were having before just sort of start to disappear. And even in my own experience, it was the same thing. When I put the remedies in my own house for the first time, like, it wasn't immediate, but shortly after, I started to see, those extra bills that kept popping up, they're not coming anymore. And my kids kids fight, but they were fighting a lot. Things calmed down. They started playing together more. And it was just, like you could feel like almost like there was just a breath of fresh air in the house.
I'd like that remedy of the bills not showing up.
Right, you want the one where all the money comes in and none of it goes out.
Let's get that remedy happening. So how would you do this with somebody that, online? Because obviously retreats are international. Events can be at any place at any time. It's very diverse from one venue to another. How would you do this online with a retreat leader?
Well, thankfully, technology has made everything so accessible. So even now, I have 2 clients that are based in the US that I've never been to their homes. And this is going to be, we're right at the Feng Shui New Year. So the Chinese New Year is lunar and the Feng Shui New Year is solar. So it's in 3 days on the 5th of February. So they have to get ready to change their remedies, because with traditional Feng Shui, it's an annual thing. So every year the energies shift, the stars shift, and that affects some of the remedies in your home.
Oh, I thought it was a one-time deal.
No, so there is an ongoing process to it. There are certain things that will more often than not, year after year, stay the same, because you have sort of permanent numbers that belong to a space. But then you have these annual stars, and they can sort of disrupt energies or bring in better energies depending on where they fall. But, these clients, I haven't seen their homes. They've thankfully, between Zoom and just sending photos and Google Maps and Google Earth, I can get a really good sense of their house. And, we take their compass directions. I do the calculations from here, and then I provide them basically with the blueprint that says, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And then, again, using Zoom, I'm there to help them walk through the process, to understand what they need to do, to help them with ideas of how and where to put their remedies. And, being a designer, I want things to be pretty. It matters to me that it look nice as well. So that's also part of it, is helping them to find aesthetic solutions that work with their home and their decor.
So does it go beyond the home? It can obviously be in office spaces, right?
Yeah. It can be basically any building. It can be, you can do Feng Shui for businesses. You can do Feng Shui for locations, as we said, where, like, for retreats, often the people who own the space aren't working in it. They have the space ready for other people to come and use. So you can Feng Shui the space itself, even if there's no one working there and there's no one, or living there. It's more about the actual physical building itself.
What about outside the building?
So there are things that you can do for spaces. In one of the schools of Feng Shui, it looks a lot at landform. So you actually take a look at the building or the home or the site in its physical geography, and you take a look, what's going on around it. Are there busy streets? Are there rivers? Are there forests? You can even get super in depth and look at what happened on the land in the past, because that too, can affect the energy of the land. If you build a retreat not knowing that it used to be on a graveyard, and then you're sort of wondering, why am I not doing so well with this space? No one loves it. It's beautiful, but it feels cold. These are the things that you can sort of investigate with different levels of Feng Shui. So, and with the outside, a lot of times there are remedies that you would use that stay exterior to your home, that have to do, like when I was saying, you can calculate whether one building might be better for your Feng Shui than others. You also have external remedies. And, if a building has like a fountain outside, that's often associated with prosperity. Or if there's some sort of moving water, if it's right on the ocean, all these things will factor into that.
Okay. I'll tell you a story. At my retreat center, when I first bought it, it needed a lot of TLC. It had been like, it wasn't being taken care of from the previous owners. So I invested a lot of time. It was like, I called her, like, I felt like she was like broken, and I say she because we had like this relationship, right? Because
you were there to heal her.
Yeah. And during that healing, like, I did a lot of work. Okay. And at the end, one of the last things I did was build there was a retaining wall. And it fell after a storm, like a 40-foot wall by 8 feet just collapsed because a huge tree it was almost like a mudslide, and the tree came onto the building and everything. So I was like, oh my goodness, right? So I had a neighbor of mine come over, and we were talking after I had done all this work. It was, like I said, it was one of the last things I did. And we go in the back and we're looking at the wall that hasn't collapsed, because it was like an 80-foot wall and 40 of it fell. And he looks up and he's like, look at that. And I look up, and there was literally the shape from like a shape of a heart made out of like the moss of the moss on the stone. And I was like, oh, she's saying thank you.
That is so beautiful.
I just wanted to add that because we're talking about energy, and I really felt there was this energy about this place. And I felt like there was like something there. I don't know what it was or who or whatever, but it gave me this sign, and it wasn't me that noticed it. It wasn't, you're going to say, oh, it was all in your head. No, it was my neighbor. And I was just in shock when I saw it.
But that's amazing. That's exactly what it is. One of the things that my mentor always taught us is that your home is your best friend. And, you don't really think about your home as your friend. Like, you don't think about a home that it's there to support you, but it really is. I mean, aside from the obvious of it providing shelter, right? And heat or keeping you cool when it's hot outside, like all these things, the way Feng Shui looks at it is that the space around you, whether it's your home, whether it's your office, whether it's a room in a space, like that's all there to support you. And the idea is, it's like you said, you want to make it happy. You want to care for it so that it can give back to you.
Yeah. And what if I had a specific goal? Does that make a difference? Like, can you change the energy for that goal? So example, an office would be like, I want money, or, like a business, or like a home where the person's goal is about healing because maybe they're sick that year and they just want a healing space. Can you tweak the energy, or is that just, no, it's just a general harmonious energy that is created?
It's actually a little bit of both. So you can't change what's there, right? The energy is like a blueprint set in the stars. It's basically celestial. And you can't decide, like, well, I'm just going to shift this over here. But what you can do is take a look at the numbers, because they're basically, like I said, a blueprint. They're a map to tell you what areas in your home really need TLC and what areas of your home are actually doing really well. And, sometimes when you look at the numbers, like the things that they tell you can be like, that one area of your home, and actually this happened recently with a client, is that, you divide the floor plan of any space into a grid of 9. So you have your 9 guas or areas, and the guas don't take into account the walls of a space. So it doesn't matter if you have a wall going right through it or not, the gua is the gua, and it's based on the outer shell of your home. And she had sort of 3 guas going across, where her bedroom was one, part of her bedroom and part of her office were another, and then her office was, a third one. And she had set up her desk in the part that was sort of overlapping between the gua that was in between. And when I took a look at the numbers, they were not at all supportive for work. It was a lot about sort of discord and difficulty. And I was like, can you please just move your desk over the other side of the room? She's like, oh, but I lose the ocean view. And I'm like, I know it's not ideal sometimes, but just try it. And I think, within a few weeks, I think at first she was a little skeptical, but within a few weeks, she decided to move it. And now, she had her office sort of sitting with boxes forever. It is now set up. The couch is in, she's got art, she's doing stuff. And she just recently made a transition in her career, and she got her first paying client. So these are sort of the success stories. You can't pinpoint them exactly, but it's getting that energy flowing. And when you're single and you're looking for love, Feng Shui is a great way to actually bring it in, because there are certain stars in certain areas that you can activate to bring people into your life, to bring romantic interest into your life. And like you said, money. People always, people come to Feng Shui often. It's for love or for money. And there's definitely things, like there's an area of your home that's dedicated to wealth and prosperity. So it's looking at that space, looking what's in it. Sometimes people don't realize that guest bedroom that they sort of use as a storage room is actually, for example, their prosperity gua. And then it's like, well, how can you be prosperous if all you're doing is just shoving crap into it and letting it sit there and you're not doing anything about it? And then you look at your business and you realize it's been really stagnant. Lots of things are piling up and it's a lot of admin, and you're not able to really get to the good stuff and get out there and get in front of people. Well, looking at your home can help you understand what's going on in your business. And when you start to clear that up, and then, you can activate that area as well by not only putting in the remedy, but, you can take it a little further and look at sort of more alternative things like space clearing, and crystals and affirmations are a big part of what I teach. So the way I learned it is, intention has so much power, and mindset is such a big thing right now, but it's such an important part of this as well. So your house, you can balance the remedies, but if you want things to change, you also have to take steps, right? So it's also about the intention. Like when you are clearing out that prosperity gua, for example, what are you trying to clear out of your business? What are you trying to get to? What are the things that you want to see? How can you make that space more reflective of where you want to go? And this is also where I like to bring in the design, right? Because if there's an opportunity to upgrade things, to change things, it doesn't have to be super expensive. It just has to, visually also align with where you want to go in your life. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you brought up like other stuff like crystals and all of that you use, these forms of energy along with Feng Shui. I think it's important, to create that space with everything, all the tools that you have.
Yeah.
So what if somebody buys a home that has had some kind of tragedy in it, or it was a sad home, like you don't know, right? Or there's something there. There's a bad energy in the home. Can this be something that it can help? Like, I know it's about energy, but what if it's something like really bad, like suicide or, something tragic?
I mean, sometimes actually looking at the numbers can tell that story to you, because the home might have actually been predisposed to suicide or predisposed to illness or predisposed to sort of money problems. Certain homes actually have that, that's in their energetic blueprint, and, introducing Feng Shui neutralizes that. But I think, in cases like that, it's really important to do what we were talking about, what you did with the space that you bought. It's to help that space heal. So you can use the Feng Shui to understand, are those things actually in the cards of this home? Is there something that I can do to change that? So, if you have an unlimited budget at your disposal and you have the ability to sort of do a big renovation where you're actually removing the roof, that will reset the year of construction for that home.
Oh.
And it will bring in a whole new set of energy. So it's not just, redoing the shingles on the roof, but actually taking the roof off. And, so that's one way that a home might actually change. Or even an office building. If you think about historic buildings where they keep the facade, but then they take it basically down to the ground and they build everything up inside that facade. So that home, when you're calculating it, you or that office building, you wouldn't take the number of the year it was built in 1863. You would take the 2012 date, because that place was completely removed. The windows were removed, all the air, the energy, everything was completely changed. So that's one thing, but that's not available to everyone. So this is where, those alternative remedies, clearing your house, sage, sound clearings, anything that you can do to sort of get that energy clearing and moving. My mentor does a lot of meditation work, and I was actually watching the Marie Kondo series on Netflix, and she always likes to sort of meditate and introduce herself to the home. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do like that, like meditating and speaking to the home and saying, I'm here to change this. I'm here to, shift this energy. We want to heal. We want to get rid of that sad story and move towards the future. I think Marie Kondo, a lot of her philosophy is based in Shintoism, which really believes that every object has a soul, essentially, that you can speak to. I mean, I might be paraphrasing not so well, but the idea is that each object has its own essence and spirit. And that's why she thanks things before she gives them away. And I think, that follows in the same idea of even these very sad homes. Like if you give them love and you sort of connect with the home on whatever level is comfortable to you, that is one way of changing the energy.
Amazing. We think about these things, people talk about it, but oftentimes nobody does anything about it. They kind of like ignore it, or it's in my head, or they do feel like it's cursed and they move.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. You can leave. You can leave, but then the next person's going to go through that same thing. And sometimes you see that those homes that are like continuously coming on the market. When I see things like that, I'm like, ooh, I wonder what's going on there.
Yeah. There was actually a home on the market recently that I saw that it actually said, that it's a professional came in and did the Feng Shui and, and all of that. So I was like, oh, interesting that they're actually selling the property and they're telling people this, because for me, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, It was attractive, right? So, you know what? I hope retreat leaders and anybody really, this podcast, we spoke about homes in general and all of that, but because we are more focused on retreat leaders and retreat venues, I really hope they use your services or, just learn more about the energy of their space, because it can make a big difference on the transformation, enhance it. Maybe there's something that's been, kind of doesn't sit well with the owners of the venue. And that goes on to also the guests. And if that could just be cleared up and, suddenly they're transforming, they're making money, they're, why not? I think it's a great tool to use to just clean out the energy and create some impact, some long-term impact with just a little, help.
For sure. I mean, I think like you said, when it comes to retreat leaders, whether it's them finding a venue or actually working with a venue continuously, it's having that end goal of what do they want from these retreats? They want people to walk away feeling like this was an incredible experience. I want more of it. And when you harmonize the energy around you, it just sets the stage. It makes it easier for people to feel comfortable, to be open, to have those transformations. Because when you think about it, like if you walk into a space physically, if there are barriers, you feel uncomfortable. You have to walk around things you're not able to get from point A to point B easily. And it's like that with the energy. So when people are coming for a retreat and they want this experience, you don't want those physical barriers, just like you don't want the energetic barriers, right? You don't want things that are just going to make it a little bit harder for people to let go, for people to open up, for people to be like, to participate and to really feel comfortable.
And you know what? A lot of retreat leaders, they often count their pennies because it's expensive. It's a business. It's whatever. And they might think, well, why go, is it really worth that extra expense? For me, I think it's a great marketing strategy to use as well, to say that the space has been cleared energetically. And like, sometimes we've got to think out of the box. And that's why I was excited to talk to you, because when we were speaking, I'm like, well, I'm sure, everybody speaks about energy, right? In these spaces. But did they do everything in their power to make sure that the energy is, harmonious, is working for the retreat space, for the retreat event, And I think that by having you here, there's going to be a few people that are going to have like aha moments, like, oh, maybe that's what's been going on, or, whatever, I should do that. So I really want to thank you for coming onto the Zoom.
I love Montreal. I wish I could come.
Just, hop over through the screen. I wish it was that easy, right? But no, thank you for joining me today. And thank you for bringing such great value to my listeners, to my retreat leaders. I know that it'll go beyond even my retreat leader space. My other followers will love to hear what you had to say about this. So I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out. It was such a pleasure for me. And I love talking about it. So anytime.
Perfect. Thank you. Take care. And we'll be talking again.
Hopefully soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Retreat Boss podcast. When it comes to achieving wellness and transformation, nothing is more effective and profound than a well-orchestrated retreat. Achieve huge revenue growth, one trip at a time. Want to learn more on expanding your business with retreats? Visit retreatboss.com, when profitable retreats are made easy. Be sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show at retreatboss.com/podcast. Until next time, take care.